Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Very serious.
Non-human intelligence exists. UAPs are real. They're here, and they're not human.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots?
Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
What else you want to know?
$7 was...
Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Across the Pond. You with me, UAP Lee. We're doing quick turnarounds on these episodes now, and the caliber of guests just keeps improving. And joining us this week, I'm not going to do too much yapping. We've got a hell of a lot to discuss, and quite frankly, his life has been incredibly interesting. But we've got a man cut from the same cloth as myself. He's an ex-military man. He's also a combat veteran, having served in Iraq. Myself, I was in Afghanistan, as you are well aware at this point, I would have thought. But he's joining us today, and he's going to take he's going to share some views with us. We're going to get into the Age of Disclosure documentary that was released here a few days ago, which is arguably the next major step now, which should hopefully open the door for some real kind of disclosure. So we'll be discussing that. But we're also going to be talking about the potential of human beings, the journey of where he started to where he is now, which is quite honestly fascinating. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Drew Bankey to the episode. Drew, good evening. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. It's an honor to be here, and I'm always looking to expand the audience and get this message out to more people. So thanks for helping me out with that.
Yeah, and then feelings mutual as well. A lot of the things that we're going to be discussing this evening, although it's something I'm familiar with, having fell down the rabbit hole a number of years ago, on this side of the pond in the UK, a lot of these topics are fairly taboo still. It's still very much a tinfoil hat situation over in the UK. And, what we're trying to do, a group of us are trying to do, is bring this conversation to the forefront of people's households because, the potential, as we discussed technologically, are limitless, but also in the potential of what we can do as people, as humans, is also something that is ripe for discussion and something that must be discussed as far as I'm concerned. That's part of the disclosure. So, you're well versed with this. As we've just said in the intro there, your life's been interesting. Life is exciting now, for sure, in many reasons, and disclosure being one of them. But let's start right at the beginning. You're in Colorado now. Is this born and bred?
No, so I was born in Ohio, and I was actually adopted from birth. So the first 5 days of my life, I was Joshua Brandon Robinson. And then day 5 of me being here in this body, I was adopted, and my name changed to Andrew Roy Bankey. So I've been in a state of transition. It seems like, looking back on it now, I've been in a state of transition from the minute I took my first breath, and almost changing identities and changing roles. And, that's been kind of the pattern through my whole life. I didn't find out I was adopted till I was almost 18. So that was like a big first trauma for me. Spending my whole life not knowing, then finding out all of a sudden, right at the pinnacle of going into quote unquote adulthood. And, that caused some trauma in me, and, went down some dark paths and alcohol and drugs, and, come out of that when I was 19 and joined, the Army Reserve, went to basic training, and started on a different path, like a better path in life, come out of that and didn't know what to do after coming out of basic training and all the training at the beginning. And I was just in the reserves at that time. So, floated around to a couple private security jobs. And then I went to the police academy, actually. And then I was a police officer for 3 years as sheriff's deputy. ended up working narcotics, doing search warrants, doing surveillance, and all types of fun stuff that you think of being a police officer. And I got to do it. And then, obviously I was still in the reserves, and then 9/11 happened. I can remember I was a police officer then, and my girlfriend then, at the time, she woke me up and said, "You got to get up, look at the TV. There's something going on." And my phone rang shortly after that, and it was someone from the police department calling all the police officers in, like across the nation. All police officers got called into their departments when that first happened. So that was like my memory of 9/11 happening. And then my reserve unit, they started to go to Iraq a few times, and something that was just calling me to go to war. So I went active duty, and when I went and talked to the recruiter, I was like, "Look, I want to go active duty, but if I go, I want to go to Iraq." And they're like, "No problem, sign the papers and we'll have you there, no problem." Like 2 months later, after talking to that recruiter, I was on the ground in Baghdad, and just a big paradigm shift for the first time stepping on the ground there. And I did. So that's 2005. I did one deployment, and then 2007 I did another deployment in Ramadi, which was Anbar province, west of Fallujah. So it's very volatile areas, one of the worst areas in the world at the time. Anbar province, and Ramadi was, when we first got there, there's 80 incidents a day against coalition forces. So that could be anywhere from just a small skirmish to hour-long firefights. And they were 80 of those separate incidences in a 24-hour period when I first got there. So I come back from that after being deployed there for 15 months. Eventually got out of the military in 2009. And from 2009, I would say from 2009 to 2014, I was a functional addict, a functional alcoholic, and didn't really know, mood swings up and down, depression, in and out, it'd be here and gone. And then it would come back strong. And 2014, I had a suicide attempt. And that's what kind of started everything for me to recognize that I had some serious damage to my soul. I didn't recognize on my soul at the time, but I had some serious damage to my brain when I was thinking at that time, and something was wrong with me. So from 2014 to 2016, I went through the VA healthcare system. That wasn't working. And around that time in 2016, I had a friend went down to the Amazon, drank ayahuasca a few times, and came back. And the way he talked, I knew it was just something that I had to look into. So I started looking into ayahuasca ceremonies. And within a couple months from that conversation, that word of ayahuasca, that ayahuasca seed that was planted in my psyche, manifested in me sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, and that changed my whole viewpoint on everything. Like I did a complete 180 of up until that point. If someone asked me what's my thoughts on God or anything like that, I'm like, I don't know, but I know there's something else out there, but I really don't care about it. It doesn't concern me. I'm not interested in it. But that would be my take on it before ayahuasca. After ayahuasca, we're part of everything. You're creating it through manifestation, energy, like, the list goes on and on and on. I went through a severe and transformative first two ceremonies, and then went back for the third ceremony. I went into that with the intention. I was asking the people that was serving medicine and everything, what intention I should put in there, like, whatever question you have. And the first question that come to mind, like, why am I here on this planet? Like, why am I here in this? After finding out from those first two ceremonies, the truth about spirituality, the truth about more truth about our existence, getting a better understanding of truth of our existence, I should say, not the whole truth, but a better understanding of, what we are as beings. That third ceremony, I went in and I asked, why am I here? Like, why did I incarnate? I was shown incarnation and a lot of things those first two ceremonies. So the next question was like, why am I here after seeing all that? And I was shown that one day I'd be speaking, I'd be sharing the vibrational source in a sense, and, you know, just helping others, usher others into that sovereignty of connecting back to source without any intermediaries in between, you know, so you can have a direct connection. That would be my mission. And that's what I was shown that third ceremony. And fast forward, you know, 2020, we started serving medicine and helping out in medicine ceremonies. Eventually started serving medicine, bigger groups, and it just got bigger and bigger. Eventually we founded Sacred Journeys Within, plant medicine church, serving ayahuasca, San Pedro, and now 5-MeO DMT. We founded that in 2020, and we still have that. It's a 501c3 plant medicine church, so we fall under religious exemption under United States laws and stuff, so that's how we're able to operate. But yeah, and authored 2 books, and done a lot of work with Native American tribes, and I'm a sun dancer and pipe carrier as well. I sun danced in 2017, 18, and 19. And just, you know, it would take hours to unfold how all that came to be, but all of it is divine timing and, you know, divine interaction. So, and my own personal, just following the signs, you know. But yeah, now I do, there's a lot of things I do. I'm formulating my 3rd book. I'm helping my wife with, she's trying to put together a spiritual based children's book for toddlers. I'm helping out, with a podcast, Spaced Out Radio. Every Saturday and Sunday night, we go live, late night, talking about all these things. And yeah, the list goes on. And I'm on top of that, I'm a father to 4 kids, ranging from 22 to 2.5. And yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to unpack, yeah, but there's a lot of things that ring true with me. It's interesting, really, because as you was going through, although thousands of miles apart, there's quite a lot of similarities in the journey, really, for sure. I mean, I'm just trying to think of where to hone in on first. For me, I don't know about you, and maybe you can share in this. It sounded like it from what you said, but for me, there's always been an underlying, I don't know, it's almost like an instinct to want to serve and make a difference. I don't know why. It's always been there in my head. And it's always, I think it's hindered me, really, if anything. And during the school years, going through that educational process, I looked at a lot of things with common sense eyes. And a lot of the things they were teaching me, I didn't find relevant. You know, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what I wanted to do in the sense of doing something different. I knew I wasn't going to fit in. And the teachers, you know, I was ridiculed, sent out of class to stop distracting others. I couldn't get on board with the whole thing. And although my grades may have reflected somebody who probably wasn't very good at learning stuff, it later became fairly evident it just was stuff that I wasn't interested in. And that's why I wasn't learning. It wasn't stimulating to me. But I've always felt different. And I've always felt this sense of want to serve in some way. That's what kind of, I think it maybe pushed me towards the military. And ever since then, I've always wanted to do things that benefit others or do some, you know, I can't just do a mundane 9-to-5 job. And from what you said, from everything you just said there's a lot of things that ring similar. And I'm just wondering, is that something that's been embedded within you? Have you got that kind of instinct to want to serve others? Because it sounds like everything you do is geared that way.
Sure. I mean, actually it's part of that 3rd ceremony, because when I was laid out all these things that said I'd be writing books, I'd be, you know, speaking, I'd be speaking at events, and, you know, I would never, you know, I spoke at several in-person events, Contact Modalities Expo that was in Wisconsin, alongside Chris Bledsoe, just recently, back in May, and many others over the years, headlining festivals and speaking about consciousnnis and basically just speaking about source. But when I was shown all that in that 3rd ayahuasca ceremony, while in the ceremony, I was having a conversation with ayahuasca, much like we're having right now, and very, 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 very direct. And I was just like, you know, I had questions too. I'm like, why me? Like, why would you? At first, I said, you don't know me, like you don't, because this path that you're showing me is for someone that has a better soul than I have, because I've been to Iraq twice, like I've done all these things, and they're like, this is the exact reason why that you are picked, or that you are going to be, this is your mission, because you have had the energy to take lives. Like, not saying you've took lives, but you've accepted that energy to take lives, and if you turn that energy around 180 degrees, you can save lives, and you're going to help save the world once you figure out that to harness that energy towards good. And I said, has this always been my path? And they're like, yes, but you misunderstood it, because your idea of serving, the highest outreaches of serving was for the people, was to go in the military. So that's what you graduated towards, because it was on the outer limit of the range of serving in your perspective of how the world worked. Now that you understand that boundary is much further, there is no boundary. You were living inside a small bubble and understanding. Now you can see your real service that you're being called to. So I believe, and if you look at the amount of veterans going to, PTSD pushes us towards depression, suicide, which pushes us towards our own healing, which pushes us towards psychedelic renaissance, which allows us to understand why that service calling that's been deep inside us ever since. Like when I raised my hand, when in 1999, when I first raised my hand and inducted into the Army, I felt a relief at that time. But there was always an underlining thing, like there's something more I can do, like that. That's why I was out, like living in camps, eating MREs for weeks at a time without a hot meal, because I had that deep service. I was always volunteering to go deeper and deeper into the service. But that internal calling, like I was trying to push past a boundary of my understanding of existence. Ayahuasca just blew those boundaries apart, and then I was able to see my true calling. So my theory is, and the whole process is designed to give veterans trauma, push them into their own self-healing, push them into their awakening, then they can see their own. So I see my time in the military as giving me values and skills that I need for my real mission.
Absolutely. Do you know, what, we're 20 minutes in? We're 20 minutes in, and my mind's, I wouldn't say, well, it's blown. My mind's blown. And the reason for that is the way that you just described the whole thing, the whole situation, basically. It's almost word for word how I described my journey as well. And the thing that rings real true is, that progression that you said is you have to hit rock bottom and suffer that pain almost before you really take the steps, and then you get almost that awakening, that situation where you get the clarity. Because I tell you something, and this is what I think that you're doing, which I really love, and I've only just seen it now really, but I've recognized it for what it is that I've been on that journey that you've been through there, and I did it alone, and it's painful and it's rough and it's dark. And a lot of the times you don't really know where to go. And when you do go into places that they tell you to go in, you get a door slammed on your face. So it certainly happened for me. I had everything, and then I became homeless and had to start from scratch, and it was absolutely awful. But I couldn't be more grateful for those situations, because I've always had that underlying need for service as well. And then the injuries, all of the negative things have put me on the path to falling down this rabbit hole, to seeing the injustice of it and becoming, essentially it's lit a flame in me. But the problem is, and I think you'll agree with this, once you've been down the rabbit hole and you've seen too much, again, that you can almost feel the darkness setting in, because you realise just how much we've been lied to and how much the truth is just so suppressed. And you can feel alone, because you're awake in this world and there's just sheep walking around everywhere oblivious to it. And you get called a tinfoil hat theory idiot, or a conspiracy theorist when you try and share your ideas with them. But the calling to help and try and awaken others and put them on that journey is huge for me, and that's what I do with the podcast. And the fact that you're doing it as well on such a huge scale, I'm sort of a minnow compared to you being a blue whale in what you're doing, and it's fantastic. And if anything else, I could end the podcast right there and feel great about what we've talked about, because I know there's going to be veterans watching this and other people in situations where they may be feeling lost and depressed and in a dark place, and just know that there is light there, and all you have to do is, this is part of the process, isn't it, of getting to that enlightenment of where you are. And I think I've been there as well, and we both know our purpose now, and there's a peace in that. So I'll thank you anyway. Like I said, even if we ended there, I feel like we've really impacted people already.
Good.
But I'll thank you for what you're doing, and obviously I will definitely signpost as many people as I know who are on that journey as well in your direction for sure. So please do continue. You had the awakening, you've been helping people. How did the UAP topic come into this? Because obviously spirituality and consciousness, we know that it links to the UAP topic. It's been spoken about many times. The CIA has had the remote viewing program and Project Stargate. So this is it's almost another leg of the same thing. But how did that come together for you? Because obviously you went through the ayahuasca process. I hopefully said it right. And then you connected the dots with the UAPs. And what is the Indians' take on that? I know you're embedded heavily within that community.
Yeah. So, ayahuasca, opened up my consciousness, showed me, from those first couple ceremonies, and then I continued on the path, kept doing ayahuasca ceremonies, and eventually led into me being invited to like peyote ceremonies and sweat lodges. And, once you start to get in the medicine community, the doors just start opening up to and you kind of go down whatever route that you're called towards. And mine was just trying to go deeper within inside myself, trying to cleanse myself, because I know that I was shown very clearly from the beginning that was a very important part of what I was supposed to do for the next couple of years, is basically cleanse myself as a vessel, and expand my understanding and deepen my faith. And it is after people think after awakening or something like that, that haven't been down that road yet, they think it's a path of light, but there's a lot of dark times in it. There's imposter syndrome that creeps in, and you keep thinking, why me? Like it should be somebody else. And ultimately we all have a sacred mission right now to step into. So it's time to just do that, but and follow the signs. And that's, follow your dreams. I started having dreams. We had a protest back in 2016 and 17, into 2016, I think, Standing Rock. So there was a large group that showed up, over 20,000 people camping out in the middle of South Dakota, protesting a pipeline that was going in. So that was going through Native American reservation land. And so it was an oil pipeline. It was big protests that lasted months. So I had dreams of going out there, and me and my wife were living in Florida at the time. And, I wake up from in the mornings, and I, go ramble on. I was like, we got to go do this. We got to figure out how to help these people. And, it manifested ultimately, jump the story forward. We organized like a clothes drive and supplies to take out there, heaters, blankets, tents, anything, because it was getting into the, I think it was November at that time. We were taking them to South Dakota, and it started off with just me and my wife, and by the end of it we had like a little caravan of people going and all these donations out there, and it was just supposed to be us going out there, drop them off, and coming back. And I don't know how to explain it, but it was a long drive out there. When we finally got out there to where this big camp was, it was crazy. It was just teepees as far as I could see, and just fires everywhere, people walking around, and there was no money involved. No one, you could just walk in and to like the medical tent and get medical treatment. You could get you go into a massage tent, you get a massage. Like it was just such a crazy community, and they're protesting a pipeline. And but when I got there and stepped out of the truck for the first time, I literally felt like there was an earthquake. I felt the ground shaking, and I looked around and no one else, like the rest of my group and people that were already there. There was but at that time there was like 10,000 people in this camp, but walking around and no one was like acting like anything was going on. So I realized it was only me feeling it. Long story short, I ended up staying there 2 months. I was supposed to be there 3 days, but I ended up staying 2 months. There was 2 blizzards I lived through, and some of the deepest spiritual experience I've ever had there. But I got invited to Sundance from there. There was a auntie soaring eagle woman. Her name is Beatrice Kingwa Jackson. She's a dear friend of mine. I've Sundanced with her since then, but she invited me to my first Sundance in UP, Michigan. That following summer, I ended up showing up, and I didn't know I was going to dance. But about 2 months before the dance, I started having visions of me in this arbor, and I would call her up and tell her about the dreams I was having. She's like, "Have you ever seen a Sundance or been to a Sundance?" I was like, "No, I have no idea what it looks like." And she's like, "You're describing what it looks like." She's like, "You need to get ready to dance." So I danced that first year, before even ever seeing it or really knowing what it was about. And I pierced that first year. So there's a piercing involved where they put metal wood pegs into your skin, in your chest, and a rope is attached to a tree. And basically you dance until you bust away from that tree, like you break your skin. And it's symbolic, like you're praying for humility and patience, and you're basically praying, your overall prayer is for healing for the whole collective of the world when you're dancing like that. And you're fasting for 4 days without food and water, so it's a dry fast for 4 days. You're dancing all day, sun up to sundown. And at some point, like most people, pierce either on their chest, on their arms, or some on their back. It just all depends. It's the Sundance would be a 3-hour episode to get all into it, but that's. Then I got gifted a pipe. I was named at that first. I was named at that first Sundance. Blue Thunder Man. Wakinya To Wachasha is in Lakota is how it's pronounced. But it's Blue Thunder Man, and I was named by Soaring Eagle Woman, the same medicine woman that invited me to that Sundance. She named me that first Sundance. So, and then I danced in 2018 and 2019. 2019, I had an NDE in the Sundance. I woke up from that NDE, and I looked around everybody, and I told them that we would not dance again the next year. And everyone's like, "Oh, the white guy with the vision, the prophetic vision and all this stuff." And then COVID happened. We didn't dance that next year or the next year or the year after that. So in 2020, 2021, 2022, they didn't dance at that Sundance. And I woke up from that near-death experience and said that, and this is Sundance been going on like 8 years, like steady. Like, there was nothing that was going to stop it from happening again. And then COVID come in and they didn't dance. So that's just one crazy thing. But it's been a series of profound synchronicities. That's the best way I could describe my life since ayahuasca. It's been a series of profound synchronicities that has led me to author 2 books. I was on Homestead Rescue on Discovery Channel twice. Once is already aired and once is about to air episode. So it's just my whole life has been a wild ride. And now I've recently been realizing like fully and about manifestation, how it works in a way. I haven't got it pinned down yet because I'm not in a mansion, but there's truth to the power of manifestation, and it has to do with gratitude. It has a lot to do with gratitude. But yeah, and I'm here just to show other people all these things, and the whole UAP thing, circling back to finally answering that initial question, it all just starts to unravel like as part of that story. Few years after the awakening, started see my first ship. First thing that I could really say, like, okay, that's not a star, that's something crazy, seeing ships. And then I think it was 2000. And
Was that out in the desert, or was that local to where you lived?
Just different places, like wherever I lived in. So in 2018, I think we moved from Florida to Denver, and then shortly after that we moved to Crestone, which where we live now, where we have a house now. But we were renting then. We bought another house here in Colorado, fixed that up, and spent a few years. But now we're back in Crestone, Colorado. For people who don't know, look it up. It's a spiritual mecca. It has one of the highest population of Buddhist monks in the United States. It has stupas, it has Buddhist retreat centers, it has over 28 spiritual retreat centers here in this little mountain town that I'm in. But it's like one of those vortex, like Sedona type areas. But Crestone is a little less well known than Sedona is. I think it's part of the land here that helps keep it that way. No matter how much I talk about it, it never seems to gain any traction or anything like that. But the people that do know about it know about it. But there's been several instances here that I've seen. Mount Blanca, which is White Shell Mountain, known to local natives around here. But Blanca Mountain, what is White Mountain, translation from Spanish, but it's right here. Great Sand Dunes is right here, and this heavy activity and well known for UFO activity in this area. I think it has to do with ley lines and energy vortexes here on the Earth. Why these different areas have such a high chance of having experiences like that.
Yeah, we got a lot of interesting places in the UK that like that. The Snowdon mountain range is part of the original Appalachian Mountains, so there's a lot of weird things happen around there. This is from back in the day when it was Pangaea. When the continent split, we got Snowdonia, which is part of the Appalachians. There's something interesting about that as well. But I've been doing a lot of work with Patrick Jackson recently, who's got tangible data on the Sphere Network, this AI network of spheres around the globe and various heights and altitudes that seem to be shooting down UAPs and like it's almost an Earth defense system. And he thinks that ultra-terrestrials are behind that, and he's got some interesting videos of things that he's captured. But he's actually got the evidence and data to back it up, which actually goes in line with Beatrice Villarroel's data, and them two have collaborated, and which is obviously now peer-reviewed. So it's interesting. But we're backing him as a movement for the disclosure of the first initial project. That's sort of what the coalition I'm forming his mission is to do, to get our own disclosure. Essentially what we've got in the situation, and I'm just closing in on the UAP topic for now, we've got a situation where for 80 years, the people, me, you, and other people, have had to go cap in hand to freedom of information, to various politicians, and beg for this information. And obviously that's where the suppression comes from. But this is also a situation that puts the scientific community out the window as well. So we're in a position now where technologically we're being stemmed because of the suppression. We aren't progressing anymore. Science can't get any further. And it's frustrating, not just for us anymore, the people, but it's also frustrating for the people in the scientific community as well. So what we're doing over here is forming a group of people made up of researchers, investigators, scientists, and influencers, and people like us, podcasters, authors, etc., who want disclosure and don't want to beg for it anymore. We'll just go and get it ourselves. So combining everybody's assets and skills, we're putting together a situation where influencers can go with the scientists, do on-site investigations, stream it live to their audience, and the funds generated via the influencers can publicly fund these projects. Do you know what I mean? And actually get these tangible information and data, and we can get our own disclosure. But turning it back on the back into the, where you're coming from on this subject. UAPs themselves, I mean, what do the Indians, what do they say? Do they have any tales and stories of what they say these people are? Or are these beings are, these crafts are? What's their take on it?
So, a lot of people, some people have experiences with UAPs and whatever, and the byproduct is a consciousness awakening from it. My path was more of, I stumbled onto a conscious awakening because when I first drank ayahuasca, it wasn't for a spiritual awakening. It was because I was at the end of my rope. The VA wasn't, the American VA wasn't helping me. The Department of Veterans Affairs, their program really wasn't helping me. Can you hear me? Your picture's locked up. Anyways, so the VA really wasn't helping me. So I just went to ayahuasca because I've heard a lot of stories of it helping veterans. And that's really the only reason why I went to it. I kind of stumbled onto that spiritual awakening. That opened up the doors. I think it opened up my frequency to be able to experience UAP and other dimensional and experience precognition dreams and things like that in a more, I think having my path was a little different because I had that spiritual awakening first, and it opened up the doors for the UAPs start to happen. And when that started to happen, it started to get me interested into the subject, like how was it connected to consciousness and all this stuff. So, and I was still doing ayahuasca ceremonies. So one ceremony I went into, and really the question when I got in front of ayahuasca and was able to, or that divine spirit or whatever you want to call it, when I got there, the question I asked, I was like, when is disclosure going to happen? And the answer was, the disclosure will happen when you look in the mirror. And I said, and because it showed me in a way of a metaphor, and then it had the verbal, like, saying that I just had, what I just said. It said, disclosure will happen when you learn to look in the mirror. And it had a mirror in front of me, and it had my reflection, and it changed to other humans' reflection, and then it started changing to all these different ET races, and then back to humans, and then all this other stuff. And then back to my face. So the message was like, it's not looking outward to figure out about disclosures, looking inward. And it's really about our relationship. And it didn't really make sense until I got further into my relationship with the Native American tribes and things like that. So I have a good friend. His name is Chief Bearcross. He's a Sundance chief. He's a Lakota Sundance chief. And he tells a story on Aubrey Marcus' podcast that aired earlier this year. You can go back and reference it and listen. It's amazing podcast to listen to if you ever have time. But he references the Lakota relationship to the Star People and how his grandpa went on a vision quest, and he was talking about how he was out there for 4 days on the hill without food and water, doing his hamblecha, his crying for a vision, his vision quest. So he talks about on the third day, a craft come down from the sky. The third night, a craft come down from the sky, and a little green man come walking over to him, and his grandpa asked him, where did he come from? Like, where did the grandpa come from? He was asking the green man if he knew where he come from. He said, that big rock right there. And Inyatanka E, mean a Lakota translation for that big rock right there. So the star being was speaking Lakota. One of the things that I've learned through my relationship with the Lakota tribe and getting deeper into it, they believe and will fully believe and understand that their language, the Lakota language, comes from a star system, and it was what they call it was given to them from a god. And
physically speak to him, or was it telepathically?
Physically speak Lakota.
Okay, that's interesting.
So yeah, and they have other. So basically, it's a relationship type of thing. They talk about star brothers all the time. Like they don't refer to them as aliens. Like they don't really have that word in their vocabulary. It's star people or star nation or star brothers. That's how they refer to ET. And it's an understanding that it's basically a time travel type thing. And it's it's not even a theological relationship. It's actually a physical and spiritual relationship that not only the Native Americans have with star beings, but everybody on this planet.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, you know, we've mentioned disclosure, and we touched on the fact that the real disclosure isn't about the technology and the craft, but it's about humans and our place in the universe and the cosmos, really. And, you know, there is I say conspiracy. It's not even a conspiracy anymore, really. But the conspiracy is, you know, that there is a lost civilization, there's a lost knowledge that essentially the majority of the world has gone through this transition over the last however many thousands of years. And the civilizations before that were very much in tune with the spirituality side of living, as much as the native Indians lived up until recently, essentially, in the very, you want to say simple, but that's, I suppose, pure way of living, the honest, the real way of living. Now, when you look around the world, all of the native populations and all of the indigenous populations that live the way that native Indians do, they all reference people or beings from the heavens in one way or the other. They all make paintings on walls. They all write scriptures. It's in folklore embedded within their societies. Now, that can't be coincidence, can it? And it can't also be coincidence that all of these people have spiritual journeys in which that they can, I suppose, communicate and interact with these entities. That, again, can't be coincidence. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I get asked this question a lot, like, how do we differentiate? Like, this is a time of AI now, and there's a conversation coming up, like, people getting spiritual insight from AI, you know, putting their dream into ChatGPT and getting a reading from ChatGPT and reading, interpreting their dream. This is why I believe the Native American, yes, it's true. There's all tribes around the world. I mean, they look at the Western mindset, and you know, even over in the UK and over there, like the mindset of the colonized mindset towards UAP and disclosure and all that stuff. They laugh at it because it's never been written out of their history. It's been a part of their creation story. It's been a part of their ancestral story. It's been a part of their family tree story. And like, in a sense, it's been so you're talking to these people about disclosure when they're asking you, what the hell is there to disclose? Like, this is our family that you're talking about. It's never been written out of it. So I tell people disclosure is a regional thing, it's a personal thing, and it's also a collective thing. The thing that we're trying to get is a collective disclosure, so everybody can get on board. And that's why Age of Disclosure, you know, checks off a certain amount of those numbers that we need to get. The people that are scrolling Amazon and run across it. I just seen about an hour or two ago, it is the number one most in the United States. It is the number one most rented video right now on Amazon in the United States, which is amazing news. But yeah, it gives me hope that in this incarnation that I'm going to see a real shift. I know that I'm going to see it eventually. You know, because I know that this soul that's inhabiting this meat suit is eternal, and I understand how that is eternal. But you know, going back to AI, the point I had a long time to get to the actual point, but the point I have about AI, don't get your spiritual knowledge from AI. Like, get in touch with nature, and you don't have to necessarily go to a Sundance or anything, but just read books and get a general understanding about how Native Americans look at nature and what certain animals mean when they pop up, or what it means when it storms. Like, everything has a meaning. But discernment, like, you're going to have, if you're getting your spiritual knowledge from AI, you're going to have to discern where it's coming from. If you're getting your messages from nature, there is no discernment, because there is nothing in between you and nature. There's nothing in between an eagle showing up or a bird dropping a feather in front of you, or you having a dream of seeing a coyote or a bear or something like that, and then seeing that bear in real life. There's no interaction. There's nothing in between you and that nature. So you don't have to discern whether it's real, whether someone is influencing that spiritual message for you. And I think that's why these Native American practices are coming back, and they're opening their arms to non-natives and people that may not be in that family lineage. They're opening up to anybody that's wanting to go down this path, because I think that's why all these practices are opening up, because there is no discernment in between some other consciousness and yourself. It's just you and source, and the source is using nature as a conduit.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on a lot there it's good to cover. I mean, one of the things that you keep talking about is source, and this is something that I've experienced myself in similar circumstances to what you have, actually. And I was, again, at the lowest point, and I needed the answers to the questions. And some of the things that I've showed you before that I wrote down off air, of what I asked and what the questions and the answers with which I got. And they were quite profound, and they changed my life. And one of the things that kind of comes from this awakening, if you want to call it that, I think we should call it that, but the religions fall away. All of the noise falls away, the divide, the hate, all of the nonsense on ground floor that you see through the eyes of the mainstream and pretty much through the eyes of everybody, really, who's not in our boat, which unfortunately seems to be a lot at the moment. I mean, but the number on our side is growing, which is fortunate. But you see that the religions fall away, and it becomes bigger than that, if that makes sense. It's not about your God and my God, because you have that recognition of the fact that we're all connected just to God is not a person, it is everything. It's all, essentially. It's just energy. Yeah. And it's everything. So it's not a case of my God versus your God and all the religions are falling away. And this is the controversial bit, is that the truth that's hidden behind the veil of religion, this element of control almost that religions are being used for now on a global scale, to keep the sheep in the pen, so to speak. But beyond that, I think lays the truth of who we are, what we are, where we came from, and our place in, I suppose, the life, or in the chain of command, if you want to call it that, of non-human intelligence. Because life is abundant, intelligent life is abundant. And I don't think that we're interacting with it, because, I don't know, we're like babies playing with matches at the moment, probably from the outside world looking in. What do you think about that? Do you think, I mean, obviously, we're talking about intelligent beings here that have been here for millennia, that are still here now visiting what seemingly regularly. Why don't you think they're interacting with us when there seems to be this huge veil of, like I said, just hidden lies and that's keeping us caged? What do you think to that?
Well, it's the same thing if you'd asked me what my viewpoint when I was in Iraq. The things I was going through, like if you had asked me my viewpoint on those, like my viewpoint now, those were every single experience I've ever been through, from the time I was born, the adoption, divorce I went through with my first wife, time in Iraq, those dark suicidal moments, all those become very, very sacred and blessings to me, because I understood that every single one of those moments led me to that awakening and ultimately led me to where I'm at right now. Very fulfilled, like my heart's full. My family's in the other room taking a nap right now. Beautiful home in the mountains, and couldn't ask for a better life. Maybe a little more money in the bank, but that's about it. But my viewpoint from that switched in that moment when I understood when I saw the bigger picture. And my hindsight, everybody says hindsight's 20/20. Well, if we keep saying hindsight's 20/20, that means we can assume that foresight, like if we have foresight too, it can be clear as well. It can be just as clear. So what we're going through right now may seem like it's going slow or there's a lot of chaos and all that, but when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this is awakening happening. This is people that's ever been through a psychedelic experience or whatever, like, with ayahuasca, like lots of times you throw up or get sick, things like that, and it's uncomfortable going through it. But when you wake up the next morning and the sun comes up, you're like in a state of bliss because you just understand, you're looking from a different perspective. And that's the only thing that's going on right now. We're from a perspective, and this is the hard thing that we have to go through as a collective, is shifting this of understanding, like, this is just a moment. We're perceiving it as something horrible going on right now. But if you shift your perspective, see, like, just take a step back. Like this, if you get too close to a picture, you get too close to the Mona Lisa, all you're going to see is black. But if you step back, you see the whole picture. And that's our perspective right now. We're too close to the Mona Lisa.
And what you mentioned, Chris Bledsoe earlier. He's he's had a lot of experiences himself. He's referenced entities such as the Lady, but he's also he's very devout Christian, isn't he? And he pays a lot of attention to the second coming of Christ. But he's also made a prophecy of next March, isn't it? 2026, humanity will have a new knowledge bestowed upon them, is essentially words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing on what he believes is coming in March next year. What do you make of that? I mean, I presume you've had a conversation with him, and
several. I've had several conversations with him. I talk to him all the time still, but
get him on if you could make that happen. I'd be very interested in picking his brain on a few things.
Yeah, he's a hard one. He's a hard one to book. He's getting pulled a lot of different directions right now, but yeah, he's a very genuine guy that's going through a profound experience and has been asked to do a profound task, and that's the first and foremost. And I recognize that because I recognize it from my own self, like what just his vibe and everything. You can just tell that he's been asked to do a thing, and those people that's been asked, they know that they have a choice. When you get asked to do a task like that, you have a choice to say yes or no. And he said yes, and he's going through and trying to fulfill like what he's supposed to do here and be a voice, and also to bring these things and show people like firsthand that it happens like in person. But aside from that, his understanding of consciousness, if you can hear past the filter of Christianity, which I look at religions and spiritual practices as languages, all different languages speaking ultimately the same words and vibrations. If you say love or amor in Spanish, it means the same thing. The vibration is the same, is still love. So that's how I look at all these, even Native American practices. Like I don't look at it as the only way. It's just my way. It's my language because I had the experience with Source, and it was very hard to really communicate with Source. So I had to step back a half a step and try to figure out some way to make the communication a little easier. And my way was just Native American practices. I see his way as Christianity. So his messages are coming more in the construct around Christianity. So his understanding of it is more based around that. It's the same thing. I could tell you that from knowing him personally. Now, his talk about Egypt in 2026 around Easter really hits home for me, because my birthday is around Easter of 2026, and I've had visions of Egypt, and I've had a message that Osiris's tomb is under the right paw of the Sphinx, and Isis's tomb is under the left paw. And I've been shown that we will go through that truth. We will go through that experience in this lifetime. So I will witness that in my lifetime, of that truth being unfolded. I never knew when it was going to happen or whatever, but when I met Chris, there were so many synchronicities that led up. I was like, I got added on to that conference at the end of it. It's a good friend of mine that's putting it on, Melissa Kane, the Contact Modalities Expo in Wisconsin. If you're in the States, listen to that, or if you plan on coming to the States around May of next year, I would go to it. There's going to be a lot of cool people there, including Chris again. But there's this last year that we were there and I met him, there was a lot of synchronicities that lined up for us to meet. So my birthday is within days of Easter 2026, and I turned 46. Chris was 46 years old when he had his experience on the Cape Fear River, when the orbs that made his main story that he talks about, when the 3 orbs and the one chased him through the field and all that stuff. He was 46 years old when that happened. So there's a lot of other synchronicities that line up. I've asked him personally if he's going to be in Egypt and around on Easter 2026. There's supposed to be a star alignment, and when the sun rises on Easter of 2026 and casts its rays on the Sphinx, there's supposed to be an awakening there's supposed to be a flash of consciousness that's supposed to come over the world. So he stated on Sean Ryan's show that he believes that may be a second coming of Jesus. I see it as more just the second coming of Jesus, but more in the form of everybody getting a flash of Christ consciousness.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's definitely one that's marked in my calendar. There was even talk of us, some of the guys from the UK Disclosure Coalition, if you want to call us that, the Sphere Network project, that we're interested in going over and actually just seeing for ourselves, see if we could get close to the Sphinx on that day. I know Chris is going over. I've seen him speak about it. But on the similar topic, actually, one thing I would be interested to do, I've already mentioned him, Dan from the Foil Hat Theories. There's a shout out for you, Dan. You're welcome. He's the chap who we spoke about earlier, who's gone through his awakening. He's completely, the one I told you about. But he's also been having visions, and obviously he sees orbs a lot. He goes out stargazing from pretty much from midnight and through until about 4 or 5 in the morning. He's out looking at the skies, and he sees a lot. He sees a lot of orbs. He sees a lot of things that seem to present themselves to him. But he also had an experience. It's an interesting one. He was watching TV, he said, with his kid, and he was playing on the PlayStation, and he went back to the PlayStation, and he says it was almost like a flash of white light, and he had a vision, and he was in Egypt, and he could see out the window, and there was pyramids and palm trees, and he drew everything. But ever since then, he's been having these visions, and he says, he shows us all these pictures, and he illustrates them. And he shows us it's like a view, like his point of view, and all of these different sceneries. So I'd be interested to show you what he's actually drawn, actually, and maybe pass them on to Chris, if he's got the knowledge of Egypt. Maybe he recognises some of the symbols and the images, obviously, because everything's in detail. It's really interesting. So I'd be interested in sharing that information with you and maybe putting Dan onto you.
You want to hear another amazing nugget? I bet you've never heard this before. So I think I messaged it on my home channel, but I don't know. But so I was talking to Chief Bearcross, the Lakota chief, and I was telling him, I was like, about these eagle dreams I was having and all this other stuff, and he's like, yeah, it's all part of like it's like some deep parts of what's basically some Lakota prophecies, some of these dreams I've been sharing with him. And I told him, and I also had dreams and channelings of Osiris before, and that happened years ago, and I posted that and talk about in my book and everything about my channelings with Osiris. But so I told the amazing part, I told this Lakota chief that I was having dreams of Egypt, and he said the Lakota spirituality has ties back, and the creation story has ties back to Egypt. That Egypt is a very important part of Lakota spirituality.
Yeah, and then you start attaching that to the stories that, I suppose, well known within the UAP community of portals and movements around the world via these ley lines. And then you see the pyramids are there, And also there's Grand Canyon. There's apparently a well guarded by the U.S. military portal there, isn't there as well? So they say.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it when we first started talking about John Carter, the Disney film, and that is, again, almost things hidden in plain sight, these portals between worlds.
Wow.
And it's not a coincidence that these things just keep cropping up again and again, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, it's here's my theory. I think that this process goes on for eternity, and I think we go through this process of remembering, forgetting, building infrastructure, reaching enlightenment through different methods or whatever, and going through this process, and we end up building pyramids. And I think it's just a cycle. So I think that's why we're finding pyramids and remnants of Egypt. And I had Billy Carson on my show a few years back. I had my own podcast then. It was called Eagle's Nest Podcast. I don't have it anymore, but I had him on and a bunch of other people that I know. But he was talking about how he went and personally had this experience where he was in the Grand Canyon, started on a tour and started to get away from the group. And he basically crossed this, I guess, a threshold, and a couple of people stepped out. They were armed in all black, like paramilitary outfits, and said that he had to get out of this area. He asked why, and he said this area is owned by NASA. In the bottom. So this is if you look back, it's been whitewashed out of our history, but there are pictures and everything. I think back from like 1910s or 1920. I can't remember all the details of it, but there was an explorer that come across this opening, went inside the cave, and there was 30, 40-foot statues of Osiris, Isis, and other Egyptian gods in this. So it's the temple of Osiris inside the Grand Canyon. Ties back to Egypt, which ties back to Orion. So it ties. I'll tell you where this is all going to lead. When they start to figure out about Egypt, it's going to lead back to the center star of an Orion's belt. That's a portal. That's an ascension portal that we go in and out of. Like, I've been shown that, and the Lakotas believe that the Milky Way is some type of portal as well. Well, the sun is our physical representation of source. So
about the native Indians, Native Americans specifically there, just to clear that up. I mean, there's a lot of talk that the sun is some kind of portal. They talk about it
as source, as God. They call it Atewi, the sun, and they really regard it as the source, because it's really the source of all life. If you're eating a plant or an animal, so there's manifestation energy coming from the sun, and it's coming down towards the earth, and we're taking in. We're like a transponder for that manifestation energy, and we manifest our own reality around us. But if you're eating a plant, you're getting those rays from the sun. If you're eating an animal, you're also getting those rays from the sun through the plant, through the animal, and but that's that's, we're all connected to that, and that's super deep. So I tell people, if they want to really connect back, outside of psychedelics or meditating on a hill in India for 10 years, how do you connect back? A normal person in a normal life, how can they connect back? Go to your local grocery store and get some seeds, get a tomato, grow it in your window, grow some type of small vegetable, or even onion or whatever. Even if you're in an apartment, you can do this. If you're on a farm, obviously, like, plant a farm, have a farm that you can scale it as much as you want. But it's important to grow food and eat that food, because if you think about it, long before we started praying to the stars and trying to get in touch with our spirituality, what was the very first ceremony we were doing? We were trying to procure our own food and trying to sustain ourselves. So growing food and growing a tomato in the windowsill and then eating said food, you're taking part in one of the oldest ceremonies, one of the very first ceremonies that human beings ever did, long before we were ever chanting on a hill or eating peyote or anything else. We were trying to figure out how to make food to eat. And that is the very first ceremony. If you want to take part in the very first ceremony and one of the oldest and most sacred ceremonies that we have, it is doing that, taking your shoes off, standing on the ground, grounding, looking up at the sky, those two things coupled, the grounding part, being attached to the earth with your feet with no interference in between the two, and looking up at the stars, looking up at the sky, it don't matter day or night. It allows your consciousness to expand, because when we stay in closed rooms, our consciousness can't expand because it's boxed in, and there's all these different cues that are going on subconsciously that we're boxed in. When we go out and look up at the stars and look at the sky with nothing in between, our consciousness is able to expand because all those cues that say we're in a box are not there.
Yeah. It's one of them, isn't it? Because it's interesting that there's so much effort goes in globally to keeping us away from that one truth. The little truths that you just mentioned there, you think about the entire establishment and system of which we're essentially enslaved to, and everything is geared around keeping us away from that, keeping us away from looking up at the stars, looking down in your phone, keeping us away from growing your own food. You've got the convenience of takeaways and ready meals. Everything is geared, and again, social media rather than in-person connections, and Netflix and binge watching and gluttony, and everything is geared around keeping us away from the spiritual element of it, and them deep connections that we yearn for, basically, as a species. And again, when you start connecting the dots of these topics and subjects, and then you look at what the system is trying to do, you can see the big picture, like you've said, and the consciousness thing is the big picture. Who we are, and what we're connected to is the big picture, and that's the suppression. The UAPs, as we've discussed, falls in under that category. One thing I will circle back on is the people in black kit that you mentioned. Now, we know now from just the UAP topic alone, from the, I'm not going to name any names, but the organisation and companies involved that hire these paramilitary outfits that you mentioned were protecting a certain area within the Grand Canyon where Egyptian artifacts were also found. I know people, and I'm sure you do too, from the forces community, from the military, that maybe are being on site or second or third hand witnesses, if you want to call them then, who know people who operated in clandestine situations. Now, I know of a defence contractor, a private security company, that were using, or maybe allegedly using, remote viewers to find certain religious or historical artifacts, maybe not so much religious, but historical artifacts within our theatres of war, Iraq and Afghanistan, and items that were removed and handed to the Smithsonian, and those documents and those items and relics go missing. So what we're seeing here is from people from our walk of life, the military, are being brought in to do a job on behalf of what would look like on the outside elites who want to keep us from these truths that you're speaking about tonight and that we're all trying to awaken people on. Now, how do we get by this? Because we're talking about the UAP disclosure situation at the moment, but we're talking about the bigger awakening. Are we supposed to be waiting for some kind of catastrophic disclosure? Where do we go forward from this? Because there seems to be this huge effort to keep us away from the truth, and these people seem to have a lot more power than we do. So where do we go from this?
I think disclosures already happened.
I know that you mentioned that earlier, but for the average person out there,
there is a group of people that's going to need, our president, your prime minister, someone of really high authority ranking to step forward at a podium and be like, we are not alone on this planet. For us in the United States, we need Trump to step on that South Lawn, step in front of a podium and say, we are not alone. We don't know what it is. And there's a group of people that need that. But for a large group of people that's operating on common sense, you can see like there's a mountain of evidence, a mountain of data that's pointing in one direction. At one point, you have to give in and give in to that understanding. Now, really, the next question that comes up almost simultaneously with that first one, the first one, are we alone? That question's already been answered. Like I think we've beat that question into the dirt. Next question is, what are they? Why are they here? And what's our relationship to them? That question, when it gets answered, is gonna change everything. They talked about in Asia Disclosure, there were 64 different institutions that was going to be heavily, when they briefed Trump, when they briefed Bush back in 2007. I have a theory that a lot of the presidents since the late teens, since the Tic Tac videos started coming out, or maybe even since 2003 when the actual Tic Tac event happened. I think it's 2003 or 2005, whenever it was. I think when that actually happened, I think every president at that point had a conclave of his inner cabinet and tried to decide, is this the right time to tell the American people or not? But we know that Bush, for sure. We know that Trump, both had these meetings where they had their inner cabinet come together and be like, what are the pros and cons? And both times the cons for the establishment outweighed the pros. And that truth, when it comes out, because no one's going to settle for the first, once they agree that we're not alone, the next question is, why are they here? What is our relationship to them? When that question gets answered, which they've known about for years, this is why remote viewing and everything, this is part of the reverse engineered technology that they got from Roswell and things like that. It's not just craft, it's consciousness also. Like they talk openly about in these congressional meetings and on this documentary Age of Disclosure, they talk about all the things that could happen from it. But this is they talk about the technologies that they reverse engineered. But what a lot of people don't understand, they're mainly talking about consciousness. They're not talking about crass. The reverse engineered technology, they're talking about consciousness technology. That's what people really need to wrap their heads around, because Dan Ferris stated this on Rogan. Like, if he does a sequel to this documentary, it's going to be about remote viewing and abilities that happen to people after their encounters. Crazy. This is a crazy part of it. I was watching that interview on Rogan. So I watched the documentary, then watched Rogan. His interview, Dan Ferris' interview on Rogan. Get about halfway through, and I'm sitting there at the kitchen table watching this on the TV with my wife, drinking coffee, and I'm like, man, I should message this guy. I was like, really, the direction it needs to go is the consciousness and abilities that come after contact. And so I went through and messaged him. I got on all his socials. I just messaged him, just hopefully like he would see it, somewhere, everywhere I could. I got done doing that. Like 10 minutes later in the interview, he starts talking about he had to cut a bunch of tape and stuff from this doc to make it fit for Amazon. It was like over 4 hours when it went into his final cut, but a lot of it was about consciousness, remote viewing, and abilities after contact. It was almost verbatim what I was messaging him. So not saying that that's a sign that I might be in his next doc, but it's exciting that that's the direction is popping up in his mind, and it's not like, what were the freaking, what did the craft look like that in Roswell? What did the material look like? Was it a piece of aluminum that folded back flat or whatever? Like, who cares? Like, who really gives a shit about what crafts look like at this point? Like, I do not. I don't care. I've been talking about this subject since 2019 and have had too many conversations on craft. I had face-to-face encounter near Chaco Canyon in 2018 that really shifted my understanding of our relationship with of ET and all that. So it's all about consciousness, They're our relatives. If they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it by now. Step away from the fear factor and don't give in to all that, because they are definitely here to help us. I think that it's our future selves looking back at us going through a point in our existence where we're stepping through a threshold out of 3D and into 4D and us, however you want to put it. We're going through a consciousness shift, and we're about to let go of the idea of duality, the idea that we're separate from anything else. We're going to live separate as separate beings, but our base understanding of when we look at everything is going to be oneness. So I said before, I don't know if it was in the pre-interview or right when we started, but everything is sacred. This is how everything is sacred. Everything that we see, whether it be a tree outside, animal, AI, all of it is sacred. All of it has a place in this existence, because even the physical things started off as an idea and manifested from an idea in someone's mind into the physical. That's how it's sacred. So everything that we see manifested from source, in a sense.
And just as a final teaser on that, just to tie a bow on that, for the audience, you mentioned the big secret is consciousness, and Dan Farrer has dropped a big hint there in suggesting that the sequel to Age of Disclosure is going to be about remote viewing and consciousness. And you've quite rightly suggested, and I think it's convenient really, that he's mentioned that on Joe Rogan the day that the documentary dropped. So he's already dropped a hint there as a sequel, but that now allows an indefinite period of time for Donald Trump or somebody else to step forward and give us the news that we are not alone. And as you quite rightly said, that sequel sets up the next question, the answer to the next question, which is who are they, why are they here? And that gives us the answer there. And that quite conveniently leads in as a sequel. So maybe that is part of the plan. This documentary, somebody from the White House makes a speech, and then cue the sequel, give us the information. Who are we? What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a genius to see like the signs that or how or why that Trump and that administration would be the ones to come forward at the podium and say that, that would automatically put Trump into the history books, for the rest of known history, as the president that come forward and said it. So, which would tie greatly into his ego. And that's why Trump is where he's at, and I've stated it on other podcasts and made this prediction years ago that Trump will be our last president of the current governmental structure. I think we're at the end of this white colonization, obligatory type government.
So, it's crazy. Me and you are just, we think so alike on a lot of the things. Everything you say, it's almost like you've taken that information from my head. And that's something that gives me huge relief since that dark period that we mentioned at the opening of the show, the first big step into this awakening that we're talking about. It's been amazing. We've been on over an hour. I'm going to ask you one more question just for the fans. Three Eye Atlas, Comet, UAP, what do you think it is?
I'm not
It's
sure
exactly. Final comment. What do you think?
I'm not sure exactly what it is, but let me break down how I see it. It's 3-Eye Atlas, so third eye atlas. I think it's here to open up the collective's third eye. I think it's part of a collective awakening. I think 4-Eye Atlas is already has already started coming into. It's already past the hyperbelt, and it's about to enter our solar system, if not already into our solar system. There's been rumors that that's 100 times bigger than 3-Eye Atlas. 4-Eye Atlas, that's on the same trajectory that 3-Eye Atlas was on. So let's think about that. Breaking down the facts and just like what has happened since 3-Eye Atlas has been doing its circle around the back of the sun, we know that it just started within the past week or so. It just started coming out the other side of the sun. What has been happening on Earth? Like what's been all over the news? The Aurora Borealis has been able to be visible on huge parts of the planet including the United States. I know places in the UK that they able to see it recently. Back in November 11th, 11/11. So how does a aurora borealis like line up with the 11/11? Like this is this is not chat GBT. Like getting back to my conversation earlier, this is part of nature like that I look at and look at everything lining up. Like people might look at aurora borealis and 11/11 is two different instances, but it happened on the same day. And what did it coincide with? It coincided with Three-Eye Atlas going around the backside of the sun. And so aurora borealis has come from solar flares. We've had some of the biggest solar flares on recorded human history happening. We're about to have another display on the tonight. It's supposed to be visible for a large part of the United States, other UK, Canada, parts of the world that's never seen it before. When I was a kid, you never heard of seeing aurora borealis anywhere in the United States other than Alaska. You know, it hasn't happened here. I've seen it 3 times in the past year.
It's crazy because you're right. It doesn't happen in the UK, and I remember only twice in my lifetime, and both of those times has been in the last year. So yeah you're right.
Yeah. So
it's crazy.
And
this is all linked to solar energy. I mean, like you mentioned, we got these CMEs. We're seeing more of those than ever before. We're seeing a lot of geological activity, earthquakes. There was an earthquake yesterday that would, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that erupted, and it's the first time it's erupted in 10,000 years. You know, we've got this crazy shift in geological activity across the world. A lot of strange stuff's happening, like you mentioned, with the solar activity, the Three-Eye Atlas. You've really got my curiosity going with this Four-Eye Atlas. That's blown my mind. Are we saying that these things are NHI? Are they intelligent? Are they organic, biologic? What do you think they are? Are they just pieces of rock? I mean, you've mentioned.
Well, it's all part of consciousness. I don't know enough about it to say whether it's mechanical, it's made out of metal, or it's a rock. All I know is it's creating a huge conversation, which it's triggering a consciousness shift in itself, regardless of what it is. So, but everything has a chakra system. You know, our solar system has a chakra system. If we look at how our solar system's set up, the Earth is the heart chakra for the universe. So if each planet is a chakra system, which a lot of people carry the same theory as me. I was shown it. This is how it's all set up. Everything in manifestation has this chakra system, from an ant to the solar system to the cosmos to everything in between. So the Earth is no different. It has a chakra system. It has ley lines. It has meridian points, just like we have meridian points on our hands and our feet. That's how Reiki healers, and that's ultimately how Jesus healed with his hands, through these meridian points through our hands. We have meridian lines that go. It crosses at our belly button, which is our sacral chakra, our sacred chakra, which is our belly button, because that's the portal that we come into existence in.
Oh, I'm going to tie a bow on it and call it there. I mean, this is one of them. I could talk to you all day long, because I find this stuff fascinating, obviously. But we've got to make it nice and compact for the viewer. What I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to invite you back on again, because anything that we've covered this evening deserves essentially its own episode, and you can get into it in that much depth, and it's beautiful, I think. And like I mentioned at the start, the reason I do this stuff is because it's not because I want to be a podcaster, and I've mentioned this many times to a lot of the influencers, the mates that I've got, because I tend not to have a great relationship with people that strive for likes and views and follows, because it's all very material. Whereas what I want to do is genuinely give people information that they can find solace in, and find, knowledge, wisdom. So that's my purpose. And I realise that befriending the influencers and everybody on this journey, and we're all on the same journey together, we're just at varying different points of that journey. But we've got a mission to help each other, and that's what we do on this podcast. And I want you to come back on, obviously, for that reason, that I feel like this information is prevalent. And the people of the UK at the moment are very lost, I think. And that's a Western thing. Maybe things are getting better in the US, but in Europe, certainly the West is really struggling at the moment. And I feel like this kind of information and this knowledge that you've given us this evening, and amongst many of the guests that we get on can give, is going to help people in that transitional period that we do have coming up. And I want to stress that. And with this shift, this change that is coming, it's happening. That's a fact. Whether you want it to happen or not, the way that we used to live, those days are gone, I think, now. They're done. We've seen the change of the guard in that respect.
Yeah.
So I think people like Drew are just a massive asset to this whole movement, and they're helping people the world over now as an author, as well as, being online as well in the space there. So I want to say thank you, Drew. I started the show by saying thank you off air for what you do, and I'll say thank you again at the end of it. Thanks so much for jumping on. Where can people tune into you if they want to get a hold of you or want to see the content that you're putting out there?
Yeah, so just my name, Drew Bankey. You can find my YouTube channel, it's just Drew Bankey. Any of the socials, just my name. I'm on Spaced Out Radio. That's on Saturday and Sunday nights. I'm live on the After Hours show. The third hour of that show is my After Hours weekend wrap up. So I kind of go over whatever guests on that day. We talk about the interview, me and the host, for the last hour or so. And there's just I've done hundreds of podcasts, interviews over the years. Been on Jimmy Church, Sean Kelly's show, Locked In with Ian Bick. I've been on Coast to Coast AM. I can just type in my name on anywhere where you listen to podcasts, or YouTube or Spotify or anything, and find me. But I just would urge everybody to understand their own power and take back their power. Capped us off with a channeling, my very first channeling from Source, and it's on the back of my first book, I'm Perfect and So Are You, which is on Amazon, by the way. You can find my books on Amazon. I'm Perfect and So Are You, or Find Your Inner Guru. They're available worldwide. But the very first channeling from Source that I had, it said, I am the source of all creation. You are the creator through the power of manifestation. Step back into your power to facilitate the upcoming evolutionary shift. And that is a message. That is a message for humanity. That is not only a message for me, but that is a message for humanity.
Brilliant place to leave it, Drew. Thanks so much for joining us today. Guys, the links are in the bio where you can find Drew. I'll make sure I get them from you afterwards. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this week. It's been incredible for me. And I think we've just opened the door on something big here. So look in for the future. But guys, this has been Across the Pond again. Please do give us a like. Please do subscribe. Follow us across the socials. We're on the Insta. We're on Twitter. We are Twitter X. We're on TikTok and Facebook as well. So please do support. Please do like. Please do share this stuff around, because this is information for the world, not just for you guys. So don't be selfish. Share it, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.